Hello everyone. Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment with where you're from and what time you're watching. That way, YouTube will keep showing you stories just like this one. Now, let's begin. You ever walk into a moment that splits your life into before and after? You don't see it coming. There's no warning sign, no dramatic music like in the movies. It's just an ordinary day. Too hot, too loud, too full of people who don't know they're about to be changed forever. That was March 8th, 2025, a Saturday in Melbourne. It was already pushing 40 degrees before noon, just over 100 degrees in Fahrenheit, and the air outside shimmered like a mirage. You could almost see the heat moving, thick and distorted, crawling off the blacktop like it had a pulse. People joked that the asphalt was going to melt under their shoes. No one was laughing by the end of it. I was working a shift at Costco, the one on Ring Road near the industrial park. I'd been there almost 2 years, part-time. Stocked the electronics section mostly. TVs, game consoles, speakers. Routine stuff. Safe stuff. Boring as hell, but it helped cover uni costs and kept me from spending too much time at home. My dad used to be a cop. 23 years on the force before a liquor store robbery went sideways. Got shot in the leg. Didn't talk much about it after. Walked with a limp and a shadow behind his eyes. After that, I started picking up extra shifts. Less about the money, more about feeling like I was doing something useful. That day, the store was packed. Not just busy, overloaded. Hundreds of people all stuffed under one roof trying to escape the heat. Kids running wild in the snack aisles. Couples arguing over bulk toilet paper. That kind of chaos. I was sweating through my uniform even under the industrial AC. It was halfway through my shift. I was adjusting a Bluetooth speaker on a mid-shelf display, mind already drifting, when the PA crackled. Attention Costco members. For your safety, we are initiating a temporary lockdown. Please remain calm. At first I thought it was a drill, maybe a fire alarm glitch. We'd had one the month before, and half the store cleared out in a panic because someone toasted a croissant too long in the employee break room. Then I looked up. Near the front entrance I saw them. 3 men. Ski masks, black hoodies. Moving fast but controlled like they had a plan. One of them had a gun. Not waving it around, not shouting, just holding it low, tight to his chest. That was somehow worse. People didn't notice at first. Too busy shopping, kids too loud, distractions everywhere. But I saw it and I knew. This wasn't a drill. My heart jumped into my throat. I dropped into a crouch behind a pallet stacked with protein tubs. No phone, I'd left it in my locker. No way to call out. I tried to breathe slow, but my body wouldn't cooperate. It was like everything went very still and very loud at the same time. Then I heard a kid cry. It cut through the noise like a knife. Sharp, small, afraid. I turned my head. She was maybe 6, wearing a blue sundress, standing alone near the freezer section. Just standing there frozen, crying like she didn't know where else to put the fear. Her mother was nowhere in sight. One of the masked men turned toward the sound. Not all the way, just a glance, but it was enough to shoot fear straight through me. The kind of cold that burns. I knew that look. My dad used to call it the twitch. The moment a guy decides whether he's about to act or just ignore it. I moved before I thought. Crawled low behind pallets of cat litter and stacked up pet food until I was a few feet from her. She didn't see me coming. I whispered, hey, it's okay. I'm gonna get you out of here. But we gotta be quiet, all right? She nodded like she didn't know what else to do. I scooped her up and bolted down the next aisle, ducking behind stacks of merchandise. The walk-in freezer was around the corner, where they kept the bulk frozen pizzas and meat trays. I yanked the door open, stepped inside, and shut it fast behind us. Cold hit me like a slap, the kind that makes your skin sting and your teeth ache. She was shivering instantly, sobbing into my shoulder. I held her tight, crouching behind a shelf of frozen veggies, watching the small glass window in the door. Outside, the scene was shifting fast. The gunman was now at the pharmacy counter. Another was barking at the manager, forcing her to open something behind the register. I couldn't hear much, but I saw the way they moved. Controlled, desperate. The third guy, bagman, was stuffing boxes and bottles into a black duffel. Not cash. Not electronics, pharmaceuticals, painkillers, antipsychotics, maybe insulin, cancer meds, anything worth thousands on the street. Stuff desperate people would pay anything for. My dad had warned me about this. Criminals aren't after money anymore, he'd said. They're after whatever the system doesn't protect. The girl in my arms whispered, "I want my mom." I know. I told her softly. "We'll find her, I promise, but right now we have to stay quiet." I watched the gunman pace. He was jittery, kept glancing at the doors. His hand twitched near the trigger. You could see the timeline in his head unraveling. This wasn't going the way they planned, and then sirens. Faint at first. Rising fast, the guy with the gun flinched like he'd been stung. He shouted something. Then bang, a shot fired into the ceiling. Screams tore through the store. I ducked lower, pulling the girl behind the metal shelving. My chest felt like it would explode. I could barely hear my own heartbeat over the distant wails of panic. People were scattering, crawling, ducking behind displays. The robbers made a break for the back toward the loading dock by the tire center, but it was too late. Police were already breaching the side exits, flooding in. Tactical vests, shields, orders shouted over radios. The chaos split like a crack through the center of the store. I stayed frozen, pressed against the cold steel wall, holding this little girl who was now too quiet, not asleep, just too scared to move. I whispered, "You're okay. You're doing great. Just a little longer." Through the freezer window, I saw two of the men running, ducking behind aisles, trying to escape. But the third, the one who'd been at the pharmacy, he was gone, just gone. That's the part that sticks with me. 1 second he was there. The next, nothing. No trail, no struggle. He just vanished. And that somehow was more terrifying than the ones who stayed. Minutes passed. Then a voice rang out, amplified through a bullhorn. "This is Victoria Police. Drop your weapons and come out with your hands up." More shouting. Another gunshot, louder, sharper. Maybe a warning shot, maybe not. I had no way of knowing. Then, quiet. Footsteps approached. Careful. Heavy boots. A knock on the freezer door. I jumped, body locked tight. A female officer stood on the other side. Helmet, rifle, calm eyes. She mouthed something, probably, "It's okay." I opened the door slowly. She reached for the girl, lifted her gently out of my arms, and passed her to a waiting medic. "You hurt?" she asked me. "No," I said. "Just cold." She half smiled, then moved on. I stepped into the brightness of the store again. The lights flickered overhead. Shoppers were emerging, red-eyed, dazed, hugging each other, crying. Some were still hiding behind shelves, not ready to believe it was over. Nobody died. That was the miracle. That and the fact I moved when I did. But inside me, something cracked. Outside it was still hot, sun blazing like it hadn't noticed what just happened. I leaned against a concrete wall near the tire center, watching paramedics treat a woman who was hyperventilating. A man sat bleeding beside her, one of the robbers, hands cuffed behind his back. The second one was already in a squad car. The third was still out there. They called me a hero, gave me a blanket, took my statement. Someone handed me a water bottle I didn't remember drinking. Later, my manager said, half joking, "You kept a cool head in the freezer. Maybe we ought to promote you." I laughed, but it didn't reach my eyes. I went home. Tried to study. Couldn't focus. At one point, something outside exploded, just a car backfiring. I dropped my pen. Heart raced like it was happening all over again. Dad was in the kitchen, leaning on his cane, watching. "You all right, son?" "Yeah," I said. "Just tired," he nodded. But he knew. The way only someone who's seen it before can know. That night I didn't sleep. Not because I was afraid he'd come for me, but because I didn't know if he even needed to. Maybe he'd seen my face. Maybe he hadn't. Maybe he was already 5 towns over, sipping a soda in some diner. Or maybe he was hiding in plain sight, changing clothes, blending in. Either way, I couldn't stop asking myself the question that still haunts me. What if I hadn't moved? What if I froze? What if the little girl had cried just 1 second later? What would you have done? You ever work a shift so long the world around you begins to melt? Not in some poetic way, more like the edges start to fray. The sound of the lights overhead buzzing too loud. The cold of the tile biting through your shoes. The way silence fills the building like water in a jar. That's what it was like that last night I worked at Costco. Out in Trafford Park. November 5th. Bonfire night. Fireworks popping in the distance like gunfire. But inside it was just me, Daryl, and Priya. And a girl who shouldn't have been there. I took the night shifts after my mom died. cancer. It came for her hard and fast. We barely had time to understand what was happening before she was just gone. One minute she was lecturing me about leaving crumbs on the counter, and the next I was signing cremation papers. Our flat went silent after that. The old kettle still worked, the fridge still hummed, but nothing felt alive in that place anymore. Bills came. Student loan letters, too. I couldn't sit still, couldn't think, so I applied for anything that would let me clock in, forget, and clock out. Costco at night was peaceful in its own way. Empty aisles, quiet voices, pallet jacks echoing against concrete. Nobody cared if you were grieving or just lost in your head. You just had to move crates, stock shelves, and nod when someone asked you to check on something. That night, I'd been handling frozen goods for 5 hours straight. My back was in knots. My fingers were burning from cold. I'd just wheeled the last load into the chill storage when Priya called out from the registers. "Jamie, can you check aisle 22? Thought I heard something." I didn't want to go. Something about her tone made my stomach twist. But I grabbed the flashlight and walked down the long central aisle. The lights were dimmed for closing, just the red exit signs blinking quietly at the ends. When I turned the corner into aisle 22, I stopped. Not because of what I saw, but what I heard. A laugh, a child's laugh. Thin, wet, not playful, more like a sound pretending to be happy. I froze. My grip on the flashlight tightened. My pulse was in my throat. Then I saw her, a girl standing at the far end. Couldn't have been more than 8. She was wearing a blue dress soaked through, clinging to her legs. Her hair was plastered to her face like she'd just crawled out of a river. She looked not afraid, not dangerous, just curious. "Have you seen my daddy?" she asked. Her voice was barely above a whisper. My throat went dry. The flashlight flickered. When it steadied, she was closer. Much closer. Water was dripping from her dress, pooling on the floor. Each step she took left a perfect little footprint. I stumbled backward, knocking over a display of cereal boxes. The crash echoed. I turned and ran. Didn't look back. My shoes skidded against the smooth floor. I reached the front, nearly crashing into Daryl. "Jesus, kid," he said, catching my arm. "What happened?" Priya walked over, frowning. "You look like you saw a ghost." "There was a girl," I said, breathless. "Little girl, wet." She asked for her dad. Then she disappeared. Priya's face lost its color. Daryl nodded slowly, lips pressed into a line. "So, your turn, huh?" I blinked. "What do you mean?" Priya sat down on the edge of the counter, rubbing her arms. "You saw her, Emily. Every year around this time. We ended up in the break room, kettle whistling. Fireworks still going off outside. Inside, it was all fluorescent light and the stale scent of old popcorn." Daryl stood, arms crossed. Priya sat close like she didn't want to be alone. "They told me everything, and I wish they hadn't." Back in the 80s, where the Costco stands now, there was nothing but empty warehouses. One backed right onto the canal. In November of '87, a girl named Emily Carter drowned there. 8 years old. Police said it was an accident, but Daryl leaned in and said, "Her dad did it." Everyone knew, just couldn't prove it. They say she appears every bonfire night. Not like a ghost in a sheet, but like a memory that never decayed. Looking for her dad. Always wet. Always alone. I wanted to laugh. Call it trauma, hallucination, but I couldn't. I'd seen her eyes, heard her voice, and I could still feel the cold in my bones. I stayed until closing. Not sure why. Maybe part of me wanted to believe it wasn't real. Around midnight, I went to grab my jacket from the chilled room. That's when I heard the knock. 3 soft taps, then silence. I froze. My breath fogged the air. The knock came again, but it was from inside. I didn't want to open the door. I really didn't, but I did. The room was darker than usual. The lights above flickered once, then held. And there she was, standing between 2 pallets of butter and milk. Soaked dress, bare feet, hair over her face. "Jamie," she whispered, my heart locked up. She knew my name. "I'm not your dad," I said quickly, stepping back. "He left me here," she said. I turned, tried to run, but the door slammed shut behind me. I was trapped. The lights died, darkness, water pooled under my feet. I slipped, hit the floor hard. "Emily," I gasped, "please." "I'm not him," she stepped closer. I felt the cold rise, like drowning from the ankles up. "He left me here." Her voice echoed, inside my ears. Inside my head, I banged on the door, screamed for Daryl, for Priya, for anyone. And then the lights flickered. The door opened. She was gone. I didn't come back the next day. Didn't call. Didn't text. I just vanished. Priya left a week later. Said she had family in Leeds, didn't even say goodbye, just left a note in my locker. You're not crazy. Take care of yourself. Daryl stayed. Said someone had to. When I ran into him outside the store a month later, he looked hollowed out. Like something was eating him from the inside. I think she waits for people like us, he said. The ones who see her. I quit officially 2 days after that. Focused on nursing school. Tried to bury it. Pretend it never happened. But every November I still remember. Still avoid Trafford Park, still flinch when I hear fireworks. And when I shop at Costco, I never go down aisle 22. Doesn't matter if it's daylight or crowded. Doesn't matter if the store is full of music and holiday cheer. I can feel her there, in the corners, waiting. And sometimes I hear her, just behind me, calling my name. If you were the last one to see someone lost, someone who never moved on, what would you do? Would you go back? Or would you run forever? You ever think about what it actually means to start over? Not the kind of clean slate people talk about after a breakup or a bad haircut. I mean the real kind. The kind where you're crawling back from rock bottom, hands bleeding, people watching and waiting for you to fall again. That kind of start over. That's where I was. My name's Dylan Reeves. I'm 25. 3 years clean if you don't count the 2 times I relapsed, which I try real hard not to. I work closing shifts at the Costco down in the refinery district. Nothing fancy. I stock shelves, clean up spills, and make sure no one's hiding in the freezer section when we lock up. My probation officer checks my pay stubs every month. I miss one shift, I'm looking at a courtroom or worse, but lately it's been quiet, steady, boring even. And boring is good when you've spent years dancing on the edge of disaster. That night started like most. Cold. Edmonton cold. It was around 30 degrees, wind slicing through my steel toes like it had a grudge. The store had cleared out after 10. Just me, Kurt from Tires, and Jasmine from Bakery. We weren't friends exactly, but we'd spent enough closing shifts together to know who liked what kind of music and who brought snacks. Kurt was warming his hands near one of the busted box crushers. Damn, it's cold, he muttered. Heard it's supposed to hit 40 tonight. Jasmine rolled her eyes and zipped her hoodie up higher. That's not even real cold. That's why do we live here cold. Then we heard it. A crash from the back storage area. Not the kind of sound shelves make when they settle. This was sharper, heavier, metal against concrete. Jasmine froze. Kurt squinted toward the back. Probably just a pallet slipping, she said, but her voice was pitched too high to sound casual. We headed toward the loading dock. The bay door was cracked open. Wind and snow were curling in across the floor like smoke, and there, right in the middle of it, was a glove. Just one, thick canvas coated in frost. The fingers were curled like they'd tried to hold on to something before letting go. We didn't talk. We just looked at it, then sealed the door shut and made our way back to the office. I pulled up the security cameras. Kurt leaned in behind me, chewing the corner of his thumb. On the footage, a figure stepped in through the dock door at 11:07, big guy, wearing greasy refinery coveralls. No coat, no gloves, face in shadow, but something about the way he moved was off, slow, like the cold didn't touch him. By 11:12, he was in electronics, brushing his hand over every TV screen, left these faint frost trails. At 11:15, he was behind the pharmacy counter, opening drawers like he knew exactly where to look. That's Terry, Kurt whispered. From Pro Canada. 2 blocks down. I turned to him. What? I'm serious. That's him. Used to buy smokes off the guy. Jasmine shook her head slowly. Terry's dead. Froze walking home last winter. They found him behind the Tim Hortons. I remembered. Everyone in the district had heard. They found him with his boots off like he'd been trying to warm his feet. Like he thought he'd make it home barefoot. We watched the footage again. Same guy, same walk, same oil-stained knees. We checked the front camera. No one came through. Just the dock. Only Terry, or something wearing Terry. We tried to be logical. Talked ourselves into thinking it was some junkie, maybe someone who looked like Terry. Jasmine went to call the cops. I saw her signal bar vanish right before she tapped the screen. No service, she said under her breath. Storm's probably messing with it. Kurt grabbed a tire iron and headed toward the pharmacy. Jasmine stayed behind to keep trying the phone. That left me to check the break room. It looked normal at first, until I saw the coffee machine. It was on, hot steam rising. No one had used it in hours. The smell of burnt grounds hung heavy in the air. I stared at it for a second, then the PA system crackled. That low buzz when the mic's on but no one's talking. Then a voice. "Still stealing from registers, kid." My blood went cold. That voice, I knew it. Mike, my old dealer. Aggressive, sharp-tongued, always had that cruel little laugh when he caught you slipping. I let him crash at my place once during a bad stretch. He overdosed on my couch. Died before sunrise while I was passed out drunk in the other room. I told the cops I found him that morning. Truth was, I'd stepped over his body to get another beer. I'd carried that weight for years. Now his voice echoed through the PA like he was paging me. "Thought you were better now, D. Thought you were clean." I stumbled back. Lights flickered. I wasn't hallucinating. Jasmine had heard things too. Something was here, and it knew me. I ran toward the pharmacy calling for Kurt. No answer. Near the health aisle, I found him, sprawled on the tile. Tire iron on the floor beside him. Eyes wide, not blinking, I knelt. He was breathing but shallow. His skin was icy like he'd been there all night. I grabbed the iron and booked it toward bakery. Jasmine was banging on the inside of the walk-in freezer. I yanked the door open and she collapsed into me. "I saw someone," she whispered. Not someone, something. It smiled and shut the door. The speakers crackled again. Footsteps echoed down the front aisle. I turned and saw him. Mike, but not the Mike I remembered, pale, lips blue, dressed in refinery gear soaked in slush. His skin looked dead, frostbitten fingers black at the tips. He grinned. "Missed you, D." I stood frozen. He took a step forward, still hiding behind other people, still letting them take the fall. I smashed the fire alarm. Red lights burst to life. Sirens screamed. Emergency doors opened. Mike didn't flinch. He just stared. Then he vanished. Cops showed up 20 minutes later. Kurt came too, but he was dazed. Said he saw his grandpa, the one who died back in 2012. Jasmine quit the next morning, packed her car and moved back to Winnipeg. HR pulled the camera footage, corrupted, just static from 11:05 to 11:25. Then came the final kick. My manager called me in, said they found oxy in my locker, full bottle. Label scratched off. I hadn't touched anything in months, but it didn't matter. I failed the optics test. Probation office flagged me, fired, strike on my record. I stood outside the store holding my last paycheck. Wind cutting across the lot. I looked at my reflection in the sliding glass door. Faint, broken, but behind me, I swear I saw another face. Mike, smiling, fogging the glass. When I turned around, there was nothing, just snow, and two sets of footprints side by side. So I ask you this, what if the things we leave behind never leave us? What if guilt doesn't fade, it waits? And what happens when it comes back wearing a familiar face? Some people say war hardens you, that once you've seen what the worst parts of the world look like, nothing can touch you back home. I used to believe that too. Used to think my years in uniform gave me armor no one else had. But the truth is, trauma doesn't wear a uniform. It shows up in different places, quiet places, like a Costco on the south side of Chicago, 2 days before Christmas with snow slapping sideways against the windows and carols playing on repeat like some cruel joke. My name's Marcus Wright, 34 years old, divorced, father to a 9-year-old girl named Maya who means more to me than anything else in this life. I work as a floor supervisor at the Costco on S Western Avenue, and I've done 2 tours in Afghanistan. I've disarmed IEDs on dusty roads in Helmand Province, driven convoys through ambush alleys, but nothing prepared me for Aisle 7 on December 23rd at 3:17 p.m. I was halfway through a double shift, filling in for someone who'd called in sick. The place was chaos. People were crashing carts into one another like it was demolition derby. Someone had dropped a half-open box of Ferrero Rocher in the bulk section, and a toddler was eating them off the floor. Tasha from General Merchandise was working the scanner nearby, her earbuds tucked in like she was immune to the noise. I was restocking AA batteries near the end cap when I heard it. Ticking, not loud, just a faint rhythmic sound. Ticking like a cheap desk clock or a metronome. I ignored it at first, This time of year, every aisle is some kind of noise. But then a customer, a woman in her 60s with a cart full of wrapping paper and frozen ham, tripped on something and barked, "Who left this here?" She pointed at a plain brown box. No logo, no tape. Just sitting crookedly near the shelf like someone had set it down and walked off. "Tasha," I said, nodding toward the box. "You see who dropped that?" She barely glanced over. Probably someone ditching a return. But I picked it up. Light, too light. And warm. Not warm like room temperature, warm like body heat. The kind of warmth that doesn't belong on a shelf in December. I held it closer and heard it again. Tick, tick, tick. My stomach dropped. My legs felt cemented to the floor. I've felt this before. I've held a device in my hand while a squad waited for me to decide if we were all going to see tomorrow. That's what this felt like. I set the box down slowly, gently, like I was laying a sleeping baby in a crib. Then I pressed the button on my walkie. Code black. Aisle 7. Possible device. Requesting PD and bomb squad. Initiate lockdown protocol. Tasha turned, blinked at me. "Wait, are you serious right now?" I didn't respond. My voice would have cracked. Within 5 minutes, the sirens were wailing outside. Red and blue lights painted the snow on the parking lot windows like a Jackson Pollock fever dream. The store manager, Greg, came sprinting up with his lanyard flapping. He didn't ask questions, just started moving people out, whispering something about a gas leak. I appreciated that. Most shoppers obeyed. One teenager started filming on his phone, narrating it like he was the lead in an action flick. I wanted to grab the kid by the collar and tell him this wasn't a movie. But I just watched. My phone buzzed in my jacket pocket. It was my ex, Tara. "You're late for Maya's therapy again. She's crying. I'm done covering for you." I squeezed the phone in my palm so hard my fingers ached. I couldn't reply. Couldn't explain. How do you tell someone your hands are shaking because you think you're holding death in a cardboard box? Everyone else got cleared. Police moved with purpose, calm. A bomb tech was suiting up near the front. He looked younger than me. Probably was. I was ordered outside. I didn't go. Just stood near the end of the aisle, arms crossed over my chest like a shield. The ticking got quieter. Or maybe my head got louder. I could smell pine cleaner. Heard the flickering fluorescent above me. That damn Christmas song still looping from the speakers. "Sir, you did good," the bomb tech said gently. "Go get warm," but I didn't move. I owed it to the people who left, to the ones who trust will keep them safe in places like this. I owed it to Maya. I needed to believe I could still do something right. The bomb tech moved like he'd done this before. Approached the box with robotic arms. Everything went still. No one breathed. Then he laughed. He laughed so hard he took off his helmet. "You're not going to believe this," he said, shaking his head. "It's a wall clock. Battery acid leaking. The ticking? Pressure buildup in the spring." Some of the officers chuckled. Tasha let out a relieved whoop. Even Greg clapped like he'd just avoided a lawsuit. I didn't laugh. I turned and walked out the back door into the lot where the snow was falling fat and wet. Sat in my car, didn't turn the engine on. Then I screamed. Loud, raw, something that came from my ribs. I hit the steering wheel until the skin split on my knuckles. I missed Maya's therapy again. She probably sat in that plastic chair by the door, drawing in her sketchbook, waiting for me like I promised I'd be there. All I could give her was silence. Christmas came and went. Maya didn't say much during our video call. She kept her eyes down. Tara said she didn't want to come for the weekend. I didn't argue. I went back to work on the 27th. The store was calm like nothing had ever happened. Pallets restocked. Customers smiling with returns. The only reminder was a dent in the shelf where the box had been. At lunch, I went to the break room, opened the fridge. Right next to my sandwich was another box. Brown, plain, no label. I froze. Just stood there. It might have been nothing. Might have been cookies or someone's lunch leftovers. Might have been nothing at all. But I didn't touch it. I backed out of the room, texted my manager that I was going home sick. Then I picked up Maya early from her next therapy session. Bought her cocoa. Let her pick the music. We didn't talk much, but on the way home, she looked out the window and said, "Thanks, Dad." And that was enough. Because sometimes the bomb doesn't go off. Sometimes it already did. And all that's left is the ticking in your head. reminding you what matters. So I ask you, how long do you wait before you start listening to the sound? People talk about burnout like it's just being tired, like a nap or a day off can fix it. But real burnout doesn't come with warning lights. It sneaks up like carbon monoxide, colorless, soundless, deadly. You start misplacing keys, forgetting appointments. You pour coffee into your cereal bowl. You start to feel like the world is just a thin layer of plastic wrap stretched too tight, and you're breathing under it. That was me on February 4th. It was 1:17 a.m., and I was parked in the dark lot outside Costco warehouse in our 4159 on 300 West in Salt Lake City. I'd just finished a double shift at St. Mark's ER. 16 straight hours of screaming kids, code blues, and patients coughing like chain smokers with lungs full of gravel. Half the staff was out with RSV. The other half was running on caffeine, muscle memory, and whatever scrap of patience hadn't been burned away yet. I wasn't sure why I pulled in. The sign out front said, "Open 24 hours," lit in deep red against the black sky. I stared at it for a good 30 seconds. I'd lived here for 4 years and never once saw this Costco open past 8:30. But that night I told myself I'd just never noticed. That it had always been this way and I was just too tired to remember. My rent was late. My check engine light had been glowing for weeks. My phone battery blinked at 3% and I'd forgotten my charger again. I needed toilet paper, dog food, maybe frozen meals I could nuke between shifts, or maybe I just needed to be somewhere not my apartment, where the walls seemed to close in tighter every day. I dragged myself out of the car, debit card in my back pocket, and walked toward the entrance. The automatic doors groaned as they opened, slow, hesitant, like they were second-guessing letting me in. There was no greeter, no carts in the corral, no friendly face saying, "Welcome to Costco," just silence, the kind that sinks into your skin. The food court to my right was shut down, except for one oven still glowing orange like dying embers in a fire pit. A single tray sat on the counter with a half-eaten hot dog. Steam was still rising off it. Something about that steam made my chest tighten. It meant someone had just been here, or still was. I cleared my throat. "Hello?" My voice didn't echo. I pushed a cart forward. The wheels dragged like they were being held in place. I had to put my weight into it. It screeched faintly as it rolled. Just that sound and my footsteps muffled and flat against the concrete. I headed toward the pet aisle, passing stacks of seasonal decor and a weirdly large display of 2024 calendars. My eyes burned. My legs felt like wet concrete. I wasn't really processing much, just moving. Then the air changed. I know how that sounds. But it did. It got heavier, denser, like something pressing down on my lungs. My breathing slowed. Not from fear, just confusion. That heavy stillness was unnatural. It didn't smell like a store anymore. It smelled like freezer burn and cleaning chemicals and something else, something sterile. I turned into aisle 37, the meat section, and that's when I saw the frost, not on the inside of the freezer doors, on the outside. It spiderwebbed across the glass, down the steel handles, and onto the floor like something was leaking cold into the room. My shoes squeaked as I stepped forward, and then I noticed him, a young guy in a red Costco vest, maybe 20, shaved head. He stood completely still in front of the pork loins facing the freezer, just standing there. His arms dangled at his sides. His fingers twitched slightly like he was holding something invisible. "Hey man, you okay?" My voice came out soft, unsure. No answer. Not even a blink. I got closer, half expecting him to be on his phone or wearing earbuds. But he wasn't. His eyes were wide, glassy, fixed straight ahead. I reached out, put a hand on his shoulder, barely touched him. That's when he moved. His head snapped around, fast and mechanical, like something out of a horror movie. It turned a full 180 degrees without his body moving. I heard something tear. His mouth opened, wider than it should have, and he whispered, "You're not on the schedule." The lights overhead flickered once, then again. Then they began pulsing in sync with my racing heartbeat. I backed up slowly at first, then I turned and ran. I left the cart behind. Didn't care. My feet slapped against the tile. I passed aisles that weren't where they should have been. End caps with seasonal lawn chairs turned into stacks of canned peaches. Rotisserie chickens next to jumbo-sized TVs. Nothing made sense. The store was changing around me. I heard something in the distance. A dragging sound. like a body being pulled across tile. Long, slow, heavy. Somewhere, a PA system crackled. Clean up in aisle 666, that wasn't a joke, that wasn't possible. I ducked into an aisle labeled 13, I'd already passed aisle 13 twice. The signs were repeating. The layout was looping. Then I saw the mannequins. They weren't real mannequins. They were dressed in Kirkland brand clothes, jeans, polos, jackets, but they were moving. One turned its head as I passed. Another had a barcode scanner where its hand should have been. I ran faster, past shelves stacked with cat litter and electric hedge trimmers, past freezer doors that hissed as I passed like they were breathing. A TV display came alive. Static first, then a black and white security cam angle. I was on it. Not running, just standing. On the screen, I looked up, at the camera. Then, in real time, I felt something shift behind me. A receipt printed out at the self-checkout. It fluttered to the floor. I picked it up. It read, "Don't look up, member number 666, but I did. I looked up, and that's when I saw it. Wedged between shelves of motor oil and flour, something huge moved. Wood creaked. Plastic wrappers rustled. Then it dropped down. It wore a red vest. Its face was smooth white plastic like a blank name tag. But someone had written on it in black marker, "Hi, I'm..." Its arms ended in price guns that clicked with every step. Its mouth split open vertically, tearing its face in half like cardboard being ripped, and the sound it made, it wasn't a scream. It was noise, glitching static, a register error, the whine of a deer dying. I ran. No plan, just panic. My lungs burned. My vision blurred. Behind me I heard the thing's cart rolling. I heard the voice again on the PA. "Thank you for choosing Costco. Your shift begins now." I ducked into the back near the emergency exit, slammed into it, locked. I found the fire alarm lever, pulled it, nothing. Then a blare, sirens, red light spinning. The creature froze. It twitched. I kicked the door again. This time it opened. Snow hit me like a slap. I stumbled outside, slipped, scrambled across the asphalt. When I finally looked back, the doors were shut. The sign above gone. Open 24 hours, just bricks. The next morning I called the police. They found my wallet and keys inside near aisle 37. But the store manager swore they closed at 8:30. They showed me the camera footage. It showed me walking in, then static, then nothing until 4:02 a.m. when I walked out alone. I don't remember that part. My phone was dead when I got to my car. When I charged it, I had over 100 missed notifications, all from an app I never downloaded. Shift complete. Welcome to the team. A week later, my hospital badge stopped scanning. HR said my profile showed I was terminated. "We didn't do that," the admin whispered. "Now I hear beeps in the middle of the night. Scanner sounds. Sometimes my closet smells like freezer burn. Sometimes I see red vests in crowds. Last night I got a letter in the mail. Costco envelope. My name in neat block letters. Inside, your membership has been updated to executive status. Below it, written in thick black marker, welcome to Night Stock, Jordan. See you on your next shift. Have you ever walked into a place that shouldn't exist and left knowing a part of you stayed behind? I don't really remember the last time I slept through the night. Even now, after all this time, there's a weight in my chest that never fully lifts. People talk about burnout like it's just exhaustion and caffeine headaches. They don't talk about the kind that gets under your skin, that rots your sense of what's real and what's not. The kind that follows you home, whispering from the shadows of places you thought were safe. Before everything unraveled, I worked at the Springfield Costco. Just over 2 years. I stocked shelves, cleaned spills, moved pallets, the usual. Not glamorous, but it paid more than most jobs in town. I needed it. My mom's lupus medication was expensive, so were the hospital visits. Every check I got was already spoken for by the time it hit my account. Rent, co-pays, utilities, just enough left for gas and coffee. No room for emergencies, no time for dreams. That summer, the company greenlit a massive expansion. More storage space, more floor inventory. A new layout to keep up with demand. Supposedly a good thing. They brought in contractors, construction gear, jackhammers echoing through the building every day. Dust settled over everything. For weeks we worked around noise and barriers. Most of us tried to ignore it. But I found myself wandering near the construction site during slow hours. Curious. Not because I cared about the blueprints or the job, They never tell us anything anyway, but because it was different. Something to look at besides rows of soup cans and paper towels. Then one day something changed. They found a door. It wasn't in the plans. Wasn't labeled. No access codes, no stickers, nothing. Just a steel door, old and rusted, like it had been hidden behind drywall for decades. I was restocking the frozen section when I saw the crew huddled around it. Foreman named Derek, older guy, salt and pepper beard, always wore sunglasses indoors, stood in front of it, scratching his chin. "Maintenance hatch, maybe?" he said, not sounding convinced. "Old as hell. Not our problem." They covered it back up later that afternoon, screwed in a fresh panel of drywall, like it had never been there, but I couldn't forget it. Not after what I heard that night. I was closing shift. Just me and Jess. She was in dry goods. I was in the back lot moving returns. Around 10:15, I passed the new wall, the one with the door. Lights flickered overhead like they do when the AC kicks on. Then I heard it. A whisper. Faint, soft, too low to make out the words. Not rats, not pipes. A voice. I told myself it was nothing. Just the fatigue. I'd worked 6 straight days, barely sleeping, living off Red Bull and cold pizza. It had to be nothing. The next day, Jess caught me near the cereal aisle. "You hear it too, right?" "Hear what?" I asked, pretending I didn't know. "The knocking." She was dead serious. I paused. "What knocking?" She gave me a look. Not annoyed, concerned. "Don't mess with me." "Last night. The back wall. Same spot they sealed over." Jess and I weren't close outside of work, but inside she was the only one I trusted. We started around the same time. She was sharper than most of the supervisors, but never bothered kissing up. Called bullshit when she saw it. Smart, sarcastic, a little guarded. Never the type to scare easy. I heard a voice, I admitted. She nodded. It said my name. That hit me harder than I expected. I didn't want to believe it. Still don't. We both tried to act normal after that. Smile, clock in, unload pallets. But something shifted. The store felt different, colder, flickering lights, static in the intercom, a new kind of quiet that wasn't peaceful. It was like the store was holding its breath. Every day around 3 p.m. then we'd feel it. The hum of the store would dip, like someone had unplugged part of the building. Then came the whispers, soft, repetitive, like someone rehearsing a script just out of reach. On a Wednesday, Jess and I were closing again. Music off, lights low, the store settling into its nighttime stillness. I was in frozen foods when I heard it again. 3 deliberate knocks. Not loud, but impossible to mistake. Jess stepped out from behind an end cap. She'd heard it too. We didn't say anything for a long moment. Just stood there watching the drywall like it might breathe. The next day, we told Derek. He waved it off. Said we were sleep-deprived. Told us to stop watching horror movies. I expected that. Still, I needed to know more. That night, I stayed after close. Pretended I was doing extra stock counts. When the place was empty, I snuck into the manager's office. I'd seen Derek stash keys in a drawer marked confidential. There it was. A small brass key in a manila envelope. Label read, "Storage B, do not use." It felt cold in my hand. Heavier than it should have been. I showed Jess the next morning. She didn't want to see it. "I'm not going down there," she said. "We don't have to. Just check if it opens." We waited until Saturday night. Closing shift. No customers. Everyone gone by 10:20. I moved the panel aside. Just 4 screws. Behind it, the rusted door. I slid the key in. It turned. The air that spilled out was colder than the freezer. Wet, metallic, sour like rotted meat. Stairs led down. Narrow concrete steps, slick with condensation. We heard the voice again. Clearer this time. "Help me." Jess grabbed my arm. "We should tell someone." Police, maybe. But I was already stepping inside. Phone flashlight flickered. 1 bar of signal. Then no service. At the bottom, the room was small. Cinder block walls, low ceiling, no fixtures. Just damp shadows. In the corner, something crouched, pale, hunched, skin like stretched plastic. Arms too long. Head tilted at an impossible angle. It blinked. Slow. Sideways. Then it smiled. We ran. We didn't stop until the door slammed shut. I locked it. Resealed the panel. Jess didn't speak. She didn't even look back. Just walked out the door and never came back. The next morning, the wall was sealed. Smooth. Fresh paint. Derek shrugged when I asked about the storage area. "There's no storage B," he said. "You okay? You look pale." Jess quit without a word. "Just a text. Don't come looking for me. I never heard from her again after that." Weird things started happening. CCTV near the back glitched every night at 3:17 a.m. Exactly 10 seconds of black screen. Static, then normal. Maintenance couldn't explain it. I started hearing knocking again. At home. 3 slow beats, always at 3:17 a.m. I switched apartments. Changed my number. Quit Costco after HR said I was scaring other employees. Derek suggested therapy. I stopped answering his calls, but the knocking never stopped. Last week I got a letter. No return address. Just my name in red ink. Inside, a note. "Access restored. Your shift begins tonight." Taped to the page was the key, the same key I threw into the river 3 months ago. It's clean now, shiny, like it was never used. When I hold it, I swear I hear breathing behind my closet door. Haven't opened it yet, but I think I know what's waiting. Tell me, what would you do if you heard a voice calling your name? From the other side of a door no one else remembers?